Okay, first thing first, when you come into a so-called black space, the first thing that you want to do is come with truth. Don't come with your emotions. Come with facts. You say white people are not your enemy. Okay, prove it.
Hello guys, welcome once again to AfriPost. I hope wherever you're watching us from, you're having a great time. Now, many times black creators have always used social media as a place to really vent and even give out their opinions about issues that are affecting the society. And one thing that we know is that these platforms are always very public, and therefore anybody can come in and tell you whatever they want. So there is this black creator who was talking about some issues that they have with whites in America. And one thing that happened is that a white person came and commented in her video saying that whites are not your enemies. And this attracted a lot of response from people. So in today's video, I want us to watch this compilation of videos that I've made to really understand the perception of these blacks that are speaking about whether whites are their enemy or not. Because if you look at how blacks and whites have associated over the years, one thing you know is that white elites have been on the case of blacks for many years and they have done a lot of things. So let us watch this, then come back and share our thoughts together.
Okay, first thing first, when you come into a so-called black space, the first thing that you want to do is come with truth. Don't come with your emotions. Come with facts. You say white people are not your enemy. Okay, prove it. Give me one source, one fact in history showing over this last 400 plus years how white people are not the enemy of so-called black people. I'll wait because you're speaking out of emotions and feelings. But this is facts. It's in the Bible. Listen to this. Deuteronomy 28:68. It says, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again." Egypt is synonymous for bondage, captivity, slavery. Okay? With ships. What people went on a ship into slavery? So-called blacks. Everybody know that. Into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it nor no more again. We are still remaining in the captivity that we were in when we came on slave ships over here. Nobody's came and got us. We're actually prisoners of war. Y'all have not let us go. That's why we need passports to leave the country, even though this is, and I know some might want to argue and say this is our homeland. We were already here. Some were here, not all. A lot of so-called blacks came on slave ships to America, but that's not the point. This is the point. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies. The Bible is telling us Israelites, so-called blacks, that we will be sold unto our enemies. So when we got off them slave ships, who were we sold to? Your people, so-called white people. So I'm going to rerun your question or your statement. White people are not your enemy. I beg to differ. The Bible proves you wrong 1,000 times 1,000. It proves you wrong. It says, "And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen, slave men, and bondwoman, slave woman, and no man shall buy you." Who came and redeemed us? Last time I checked, we're still here as prisoners of war. So don't come speaking emotion, come with facts. Of course you are. If you weren't, why is it that your people shoot down my people in the middle of the street and go off not guilty? Why is that they getting ready to acquit? If y'all are not the enemies of so-called blacks, explain why Derek Chauvin, the officer who put his knee on George Floyd's neck, is getting ready to be acquitted. Make it make sense. Explain why the so-called black man is 3/5 of a man. He's not even a whole man. Only an enemy has done this. They getting ready to acquit him. They getting ready to let him off. See, and that's scriptural too, Zechariah 11:5. Whose oppressors slay you, who slay us, and then hold themselves not guilty. A friend doesn't do things like that. An enemy does things like that. And we can go on and on and on of the things that y'all have done to so-called black folks for the last 400 plus years. To come on here and make that statement is pretty bold. You got to be living under a rock somewhere. Of course you are. The Bible even tells us you are our enemy. We are who you was, so-called blacks was sold to whites. But the Bible is telling us that you are our enemy, and that's why y'all continue to do the things that y'all do to us. So next time you decide you want to come into a so-called black space and comment, come with facts. Because at the end of the day, the facts still remain. You guys are, whites are the enemies of so-called blacks. And that's just truth. And I'll end it with this. This is the three holy children. This is in the Apocrypha. Y'all remove this. The Romans, your people, your forefathers removed this from the Bible, which is our history, so that we wouldn't know the truth. But this is the three holy children, 1 and 9. And thou didst deliver us into the hands of the lawless enemies. This is the Most High again declaring that so-called white people are in fact the enemies of so-called black people. To the lawless enemies, most hateful forsakers of God, and to an unjust king and the most wicked in all the world. If y'all don't open up this Bible and read and find out who is who, at the end of the day, your biblical God-given nationality is a Edomite. You're Esau. And guess what? Esau hated Jacob. Jacob is the so-called black people. That's our biblical nationality. We're the Israelites. Esau hated Jacob. And he said when he buried his father, he will slay his brother Jacob. And what do you think has been going on for 400 plus years in America? Whites have been slaying blacks and go off not guilty for 400 plus years. If that's not an enemy, somebody please explain to me what an enemy is.
One of the things I'm not going to do is go back and forth with white content creators that are asking, where's Kamala? Or where's Barack Obama? They know exactly where Barack Obama and where Kamala are. They would rather pretend that these black politicians, primarily black politicians, just disappear and they just stop fighting after they lose an election. So the reason why black primarily politicians disappear is because the Democratic Party has a trauma response to how predominantly white voters vote in every single election cycle. If a black politician loses an election that they believe that they were going to win, they want them nowhere near the limelight. They want them away from the limelight, and they start pushing out primarily white and non-black people to the forefront. You see, a lot of these white content creators know this, and they think that they have a gotcha question, but they would rather ignore the fact of how their family members influence the Democratic Party doing this, how the Democratic Party often pushes black politicians to the back because they don't know if they can muster the support from white voters. Van Jones, after the 2016 election, in a CNN roundtable, coined the term white lash when Donald Trump won in 2016. White lash, in his definition, was the response that white voters had to Barack Obama's 2 terms in the White House, where he won twice without winning the white vote. And since 2016, the 2016 election, white voters have voted for Donald Trump, both men and women, 3 times. A lot of these white content creators know this. They get online, they set their cameras up because they want to spark a conversation around something that they already know the answers to, but they don't want to place blame at the feet of who's actually responsible. White people. Because if they were actually serious about answering that question, they would ask the question, why do white people keep voting for regressive politicians that lead to the Democratic Party pushing black politicians when they lose elections to the back burner? But they will never ask that question because they don't want to blame the people that are actually responsible, like their grandparents or their favorite aunt or uncle or sibling or their parent. They would much rather pretend that these black politicians are disappearing simply because they don't care. And they know that that's not what it is. These black politicians disappear because y'all tell them to. Y'all tell them, you show them all the time that you don't want them to represent you. Why do you think when you look at the Democratic and Republican Party, the overwhelming majority of elected officials look like you. They don't look like us because you don't want to see us in your space. That's why these black politicians disappear. So, to summarize, if you want to ask the question seriously of where these black politicians are, ask your community. Ask your community why you didn't vote for them.
Well, hello there. If you ever want to talk about George Floyd or any other mainstream black trauma, all you gotta do is wait for a non-black person to talk about their stuff. And you say, I'm only focused on black people issues. Oh, you're gonna hear all about how George Floyd was a nigga that died in the streets. And if it wasn't for them out there protesting, we wouldn't be where we are. Which, surprise, we're in the same space, if not worse, because of their voting habits. Nevertheless, you're going to hear a long list of their accomplishments that they did. So apparently, all Hispanics, all Asians, all Native Americans, everybody was out there protesting for us, all of them. And apparently they want something in return, which black people already gave them tenfold. Even though we're going through our own genocide here, they don't give a damn about that. Even though we gave them the voting rights that they used and abused. They don't care about that. They don't care that the fact that Kamala Harris wasn't elected, we are the ones that are affected the most. But you won't hear them say that. Then they're saying, where is she? Well, she was on the ballot, is where she was. Why don't y'all get out there with the white folk and sing, we shall overcome, in an offbeat, off-rhythm falsetto? Why they don't sing somebody else's songs? What are y'all overcoming? There's no soul in the song because there's no soul with the history in it. They don't have no rhythm because they ain't used to having to run away. Do you hear what I'm saying? Apparently, giving people voting and immigration rights through our blood wasn't enough for them. They want us to now fix what they had overturned. And you better say that you hate Kamala. You better say it. Joe Biden, fine. But Kamala, now you're a genocidal maniac. And not just to the non-blacks. Oh, the uppity niggas too. Also, we are not marginalized. Marginalized means pushed off to the fringes of society and nobody pay attention to us. We are the highlight of everybody's lives. We are oppressed. It's even worse than marginalization. You can have oppression without marginalization. Did y'all know that? It's happening. We built this country. Everything was built around our labor. Still is. Stop using these non-black people terms. You know what you are. Oppressed. You're only using marginalized so you can fit in with them peoples. If your issues are overlapping with non-black people, you may want to look around and see what the fuck is going on. Where are you standing at? When you don't get that job, it's not because you're a woman. It's not because you're a black woman. It's because you're black. When you experience ableism, it's not because you're disabled in some type of way or have some type of disability. It's because you're black. That's why you can have a black patient and a white patient, both with the same disability, and that white patient get treated better. It's not ableism. It's because you're black. When you go through homophobia and transphobia outside of the black community, it's not because you're those things. It's because you're black. The other stuff comes later. That black opens you up to worse treatment. When it's attached to something else, sure. But that first one was because of your race. You get no respect as a black person. Nobody comes and respects your culture. Nobody calls our culture beautiful. Have you noticed that? Oh, the Hispanic culture is beautiful. Oh, the Native Americans culture is beautiful. Oh, this Chinese, Japanese, whatever Asian culture is beautiful. But nigga culture, it's never called beautiful. Remember that. Ask one of your BIPOC friends what their favorite part of your culture is. You know what they gonna say? Something about your struggle. Y'all are such a resilient people. I don't want to hear that shit. We gotta be resilient because of you motherfuckers. But ask them though. Just send them a text. And then duet this and let me see that text message. What's your favorite part of black culture? 10 out of fucking 10.
So that is just a snippet of what's happening in the entire society in America. And I think one thing you can't blame blacks for is having that thought that some whites might not really be liking them. Because if you look at the relationship between blacks and whites over the years, you are finding out that blacks have gone through some of the worst challenges in the hands of whites. And this is not something that we can just brush off and say that it's not time for us to be enemies, or it's not time for us to really look at these things in a way that, or in a lens that we are looking at it through. But we have to take into account the history of blacks in America. It has not been easy for them. It has not been easy for them. They've gone through the worst. Imagine the most persecuted race in America is not even the Hispanics, it's blacks, because these people have worked years without pay. These people have been considered as less human beings. There were times when blacks were not even allowed to mix and do things that white people were doing. If these are some of the challenges that they have passed through, some of them grew up seeing whites access better education, yet for them, they are denied such kind of things. So the only immediate thing they can think of is that these people, maybe they think we are not good enough, or they are our enemies. So I do not begrudge blacks who think that way. While I also have the opinion that this is a creation of white elites. It's not the normal white person who has created this. But then this creation, since it has happened over the years, it has also taken up the mind of the current normal white person. And therefore, while elites have used it to really continue amassing resources that they have, these other whites are also finding themselves caught up in this because of the privilege that they have gotten over the years. The perception among some black Americans that whites are their enemies is rooted in a long history of systemic oppression, violence, and betrayal, stretching from slavery to the present day. This sentiment, while not universal, emerges from centuries of lived experiences and inherited trauma, where white individuals and institutions have often been the architects or enforcers of black suffering. Understanding this perspective requires examining the challenges black Americans have faced and how they have shaped distrust. Enslavement beginning in the 17th century stripped millions of Africans of their humanity, subjecting them to brutal labor, family separation, and cultural erasure, all enforced by white slaveholders. Even after emancipation in 1865, freedom was hollow promise. Black courts and Jim Crow laws upheld by white authorities restricted voting, education, and economic opportunities, ensuring second-class citizenship. Lynchings, often perpetrated by white mobs, terrorized communities, with over 4,000 documented cases between 1877 and 1950. These acts weren't just violence. They were public displays of dominance, signaling that white supremacy would tolerate no challenge. The 20th century brought new struggles. Redlining, a federal policy backed by white-led institutions, confined black families to underfunded neighborhoods, limiting wealth building through home ownership. In 1968, the median black household was just 10% of the wealth of the median white household, a gap that persists. The civil rights movement, while triumph came at a cost, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. were assassinated, and white backlash fueled resistance to integration. The war on drugs, launched in the 1970s, disproportionately targeted black communities, leading to mass incarceration. By 1994, black Americans, despite being 13% of the population, made up 35% of the prison population, often for minor offenses, while white offenders faced lighter penalties. Today, disparities in policing, healthcare, and education endure. Black Americans are nearly 3 times as likely to be killed by police as whites, with cases like George Floyd's 2020 murder reigniting outrage. These incidents aren't isolated. They echo a pattern where white systems, from courts to corporations, seemed rigged to protect white interests while neglecting black lives. For some black Americans, this history breeds a belief that whites, consciously or not, uphold a structure that thrives on black disadvantage. It's less about individual malice and more about a collective failure to dismantle inequalities. While not all black people hold this view, The sentiment reflects a rational response to centuries of evidence. When harm has consistently worn a white face, trust becomes a casualty. This is the case of what's happening between blacks and whites in America. While we might fight for integration or togetherness, there are certain things that I think blacks will have to demand from whites for them to come back and start gaining trust with them. Because, for example, if you talk about topics like reparations, you find that when this topic is brought, no white person is even supporting it. Many of them think that reparations are about giving blacks free money that they don't deserve, forgetting about the 400 years of slavery that they went through, the persecution that they have gone through, the disadvantage that they have gone through. Remember things like redlining. If these kind of policies were subjected towards whites, how would they feel? Would they also still say that they are at par with their peers? That can't be the truth. So I believe that it is time for blacks to come out and talk about their challenges. And I think also whites must also appreciate that it has not been an easy journey for blacks in America. The white privilege has made many whites get catapulted to better positions and opportunities. But when you look at what it has given blacks, it is all about degrading them and preventing their upward mobility, both in education, also in wealth creation. This is what I think is happening. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. And if you're watching us for the first time, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.